I wrote a note to myself between junior year and senior year of college. I wrote, I never understood how anybody could ever become depressed. I always thought life was too precious and amazing to be upset all the time, but now I get it, and it scares me. I don't want to get it. I still don't even know why all this is happening to me. I am just scared. Earlier in my life, I would look at that and be like, how are you depressed? Like, life's not bad. Why are you so unhappy all the time? There's no way you could just be unhappy 24/7. And then all of a sudden I started knowing what that felt like, and it was very scary. I want to talk to you about my experience with anxiety and mental health. I don't think we talk about it nearly enough. There's still such a stigma around it. I want to do my part, as small as that may be, to help break that stigma because it is so important. I want to preface all of this by saying I'm not a professional. I'm just a guy, and I've figured out what works well for me, and I want to share that with you. But please seek professional help if you need it. I want to put the suicide hotline number here. If you're experiencing any suicidal thoughts, please reach out for help. I just want to do my part to help you, but please seek out a professional if you need it. Let me tell you a little bit about my experience, how I discovered that I had anxiety in the first place. So, high school, I was top of the world. I loved high school. I loved being in front of people. I liked being everybody's friend. I did presentations. I was the president of a club. I just loved people. I loved being in front of people. Didn't bother me in the slightest. So, when I was going away to college, I had to pick an elective, and I picked public speaking because I thought, that's a breeze. I love speaking in front of people. Fast forward now, I'm away at school. It's my first week. I'm sitting in this class. It's not the public speaking class. It's just a regular class. The professor's talking, and suddenly I feel really nauseous, flush. I get these cold sweats, just that feeling of having almost a flu. And I go into this panic that I need to get to the bathroom. I ran over to the bathroom. Now, when I got there, suddenly the feeling kind of went away, but I still felt really flushed and nauseous, but I didn't feel like I was going to be sick. There was about 30 minutes left of class, and I couldn't bring myself to go back to the classroom. So I just paced the halls until I saw people leaving, and then I snuck back in and grabbed my stuff. So I just assumed, all right, I'm sick. I have this bug. This happened every single day throughout college. 4 years of college. Like I said, this was the first week of my freshman year. This experience was every single day for 4 years. Now, going back to that public speaking class I took, my anxiety got so bad that I didn't do any of my speeches. I cut class those days. The single hardest class I ever took, because I literally just couldn't bring myself to sit in class, and I would just skip it. To explain how severe it got, I ended up not being able to go to the dining hall a lot of days. I would have cereal or peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in my dorm room. I wouldn't be able to go down to the laundry room in my dorm and get my laundry because people would be there. It developed into this severe social anxiety, just this general social anxiety where any public setting made me so anxious. Going to the grocery store, I would have to basically supermarket sweep around the entire thing to get in and out as quickly as possible, because the second I would go through those doors, I would just go into this insane panic. I did not think it was anxiety. I just assumed I was sick and I had a bug. At the time, I was dating this girl who was a psychology major, and I was explaining to her what was going on, and she ended up telling me that she thought that I had anxiety. And to me, anxiety was something that people just had that were super worried about everything all the time. And I didn't feel worried about anything. Like in movies or TV shows, the people that were anxious were just the people that were having these over the top, almost humorous freakouts about nothing. And that wasn't me. I was sitting in class and I felt sick, and that was it. I didn't think I would have anxiety. I finally decided that after reading about it again and again and again through all the resources I could find, it finally started to sound like, okay, I might actually have anxiety. When I look back on my 4 years of college, all I remember is panic attacks. Every single thing I did, if I went one day of being able to do something social, that was a huge win. Like having a quiz was like a death sentence to me. Like I couldn't sit there. I would go into this panic. I would be sweating so bad. I remember doing midterms and finals and rushing through. I didn't realize that those were panic attacks because nobody talked about it. That was not something that I knew even existed. And now, obviously, looking back on it, it's very clear that I was having these panic attacks. And if you're watching this, you're wondering, all right, like, what were you worried about? For me, I always had this thing about throwing up. Nobody likes it, obviously, but as a kid, I had this weird fear of it. My body just went into this fight or flight mode, and for me, having that feeling of needing to get sick was the thing that scared me the most. So it seems like it was my body's way of saying, you're in danger. Classrooms, I would have to sit closest to the exit as possible. When I would go to restaurants, I would map out my routes in my head of how I would be able to escape. I knew rationally that I wasn't going to be sick, but then that feeling was so strong that I just threw all that out the window, and it just became this game of what if? Like, what if this is different? What if this is this time that I actually get sick? And that would happen every single time. And now, spoiler alert, we're here 12 years, I think, after I developed my first panic attack. I've never once actually gotten sick. That one thing that I've been so afraid of has never actually happened. But it's that every single time thinking, what if this time's different? Someone experiencing a panic attack, I know that it's silly. Like if I'm in a grocery store, I know that I'm not going to suddenly be sick, but I could not come to grips with that. It was still a absolutely terrifying experience that it felt like life or death. So if you've not experienced a panic attack, just know to the person experiencing it, it's very, very real. So I ended up buying all these books. The Anxiety and Phobia Workbook was one that I really liked. And then I bought this one book called Self-Coaching. I ended up emailing the author of the book. I needed help. I did everything in the book that he laid out, and I could not beat my anxiety. And I want to share with you, he gave me a really lengthy response, and I owe this man so much gratitude because this blurb from the email helped me more than anything else. He said, think of a gerbil on one of those spinning wheels. The faster the gerbil runs, the faster the wheel turns. The wheel represents your anxiety. By compulsively turning the wheel, you wind up spinning it, your thoughts, faster and faster. For a gerbil to stop spinning the wheel, it must get off the wheel. The problem may be that you're trying too hard. I was trying so hard to beat my anxiety. I was spinning that wheel faster and faster and faster. There's no way to beat anxiety if you're just going to keep spinning that wheel. You must embrace the notion that the best you can do is nothing. That changed everything for me. You're living in the future. You're living in these what if situations, anticipating an event 2 weeks out, months out, years away. You're anticipating the worst of it. You need to learn to trust today and to let go. Now, that's so hard to do. When you're in the midst of anxiety, especially in a panic attack, the thought of just letting go and doing nothing is so terrifying, but it is the single best thing I've ever done. Now, me talking to you now, I'm in a very good place. I have my anxiety mostly under control. I attribute it to a lot of things, but I think the single biggest thing was learning how to be in that present moment, learning mindfulness. I still think about the future, but I'm not so worried about it because I realize the only thing I can control is right now. One analogy that worked really well for me was the squirrel analogy. And if you know anything about me, you know that I love squirrels. It has nothing to do with that, but the squirrel analogy is, if you're driving down a road by yourself, no cars around, nothing, a nice quiet road, it's a beautiful day, you have your windows down, you're enjoying the ride. The furthest thing from your mind is thinking, what if a squirrel jumps out in front of me? Like, what am I going to do? You don't think about that because you trust that if that were to happen, you would know how to handle that situation. You would hit the brakes, you'd go around it. If you're a terrible person, you would just keep going, but you trust that you'll know what to do in that situation. So you can just roll the windows down, listen to some good music, and enjoy the drive. You could probably see where this analogy is going. It's a perfect one for life. When you're just going along in your life with anxiety, those squirrels are all the things you're anticipating in the future, thinking, what if this happens? What if that happens? You can't just sit back and enjoy it because you're so worried about what's going to happen that you need to learn how to trust yourself, trust now, only focus on the present, and enjoy it. To me, that's the biggest thing that changed my anxiety forever. I started learning how to meditate. There are so many apps out there to get you started. I won't get too into meditation now, but when I first heard it, I just assumed it was that home kind of thing where you're sitting cross-legged on the floor. It's not that at all. I can just pull up an app, do 5 minutes of meditation just sitting here. All I have to do is close my eyes and breathe. That's all it is for 5 minutes, and it feels so good. Meditating is the best way to learn how to be mindful, which is to say, to live in the present moment, to fully be present. Now, there are a lot of things you can do to stay present, but meditation is the best practice for it and the one that I recommend the most. I ended up in recent years finding a psychologist that I really connected with. I had always assumed that seeing a therapist was not for me because I'm really good at self-learning, but I ended up kind of shopping around, for lack of a better word, and I found somebody that I didn't think I would connect with. It was this older woman that I don't necessarily have a lot in common with, but when I spoke to her, she seemed to really understand what I was going through. And I reached out to her because I was about a year removed from my wedding, and I could not imagine going and being the center of attention. Now, obviously, my wife's the center of attention. It's a wedding. But I'm going to be in front of people the entire day and night. That was terrifying to me. So I figured I needed to see somebody. I needed to figure this out. And I went to her with the intention of curing my anxiety. I wanted to find the thing that triggered me, because I always thought, like, if I could identify that trigger, that I could find the cure forever. And anxiety doesn't work like that. Anxiety is just a manifestation of a million different things in your life. You're not going to pinpoint. It's not like a traumatic experience where you realize, oh, this happened to me. Now that I know it, I'm free. There's no real cure. You just kind of learn how to live with anxiety. And at this point now, I know that it's just a part of me, but it's not the main part of me. It's certainly not the only part of me, and I can control it now. Seeing this psychologist, she really challenged me to do what scares me. The strategy that we did was every single week, she wanted me to do something that made me anxious and to build up those anxiety levels. So her goal for me was to get me to a point where I'm at a 6 or 7 on the anxiety scale, to realize that I can go through those experiences, be scared, and come out totally fine. And through doing that practice, I realized that I was having a harder and harder time reaching that 6 or 7. She had me just stand up in the middle of the room and talk to her versus sitting across from her on a chair. And I stood up. I was like, this is really silly. And I actually started getting nervous because it was that feeling of being the center of attention. And it was basically that exposure therapy of doing what scares you, getting through it, and realizing, okay, nothing bad's happening. That helped me so much. And I ended up wanting to challenge myself. I wanted to feel the anxiety so I could get through it and learn that I was okay. Because back in college, I would experience this anxiety. I would have my exit strategy. I'd leave, feel better, and have this endless cycle. Now, sometimes I would make it through a class and it was a real struggle. I didn't look at it as a win. I just looked at it as survival. And then actually taking it on as a challenge, I started realizing all right, this is a win. Like, I'm okay. Now I could do something a little bit harder and a little bit harder. And I started building that up. It was a lot of work. It was more than just sitting down and talking to somebody. Doing what scares you is obviously so terrifying, but it was amazing. I don't go every single day with panic attacks anymore. I'm at a really good place. I could talk about it for hours on what I've done to actually get to this place, but I'm in a good place now. But it doesn't mean I'm going to stop talking about it, because there are millions and millions of people out there dealing with anxiety, depression, all these mental issues that nobody's talking about. There's such a stigma. People need to not feel so alone, because I know that feeling of just feeling like nobody out there gets it. When I was in college, eating dinner alone in my dorm room, having just a bowl of cereal while all my friends went out to eat, I felt so lonely. I assumed that nobody knew what I was going through. What I'm doing right here, I'm uploading this to, I don't know how many people will watch it. Even if only 10 people watch it, I'm talking to you guys, you 10 people, letting you know that you're not alone. If you can do that, if you can make a difference in one person's life, it is so worth it. And getting those feelings out, not bottling them up inside, is so helpful for you. That feeling of being alone is partly because you're holding in those feelings. Once you put it all out there, you're going to see that so many other people are experiencing this same thing or very similar things to what you're experiencing. I know I talked a lot. If you watched this, thank you. If you have any questions, if you need to talk, please, you can reach out. I'm not a professional, but I'm always happy to help in any way that I can, offer up some advice, talk to you a little bit more about my experience and what I've been through, because it's hard. It sucks. Anxiety's still a part of me. There are some things that still make me really anxious, but it's not debilitating anymore. I just want you to know that if you're at a point where it feels debilitating, it feels like it's controlling your life, I promise you that's not going to be the case forever. Meditation, mindfulness are huge. Laugh more, open up, talk to a professional, shop around, find a professional that's right for you. You don't have to continue seeing somebody just because you saw them one time. They understand in this business that you need to find the right person for you. It's your mental health, it's your life. You don't need to settle for somebody that you don't have a connection with, and they know that, so don't feel bad. Find somebody that you can trust, that you want to talk to. Please just know that you're not alone, and you are very far from alone. I promise there are people close to you experiencing this that are just too afraid to open up, and if you start opening up, that's going to change. There are so many people out there that understand, that feel what you're going through, and I am one of them. So I guess that's it. I don't know how to end videos. This is a real somber thing. Thanks for watching this, and just remember, you are not alone.